this very special guest, Monja Boonzaier. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
We're going to do lots of very interesting talking. We were introduced to each other by a mutual friend, Robin Darcy. She's my Pilates instructor. And she said we should meet. And indeed, we've got so many common interests. And we basically just want to see healthy future generations. And it starts from us being connected with ourselves, but it starts also for babies being, conceived and being pregnant and birthed and stimulated right. So, and this is where we are all in the same space as midwives, as mothers and parents. So you're in for a real treat. But before we get going, I just want to thank Baby City for being a faithful sponsor to everything we do at Sister Lillian Center and Sensitive Midwifery. Without it, we can't do all these things. And welcome to all of you, because if it's all for you and about you. So thank you for being here with us live. So Monja is a wonderful woman, dynamic. She's all about movement. She's got an interesting story. And Monja, I don't want to talk too much about you. I'm going to give it over to you to tell me more about you and see where this goes.
Thank you. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to share my stories and my experience with you, and especially to an audience of midwives and mothers and babies.
You're welcome.
So I thought as a start, I would like to, since we are on the topic of connection to self and baby, I would like to share a story of my birth with you, which I think had a big impact on my life as an adult today. So I was born in Bloemfontein in the Free State in 1977. And in those days, the fathers were not allowed to be present at birth. So my dad had to wait outside. And when I was born and my father was ready to see me, the nurse came up to him and said, "Mr. Boonzaier, are you the lucky father whose daughter is born on the 7th of the 7th, 77? And my dad said, "Yes, I am." And the nurse said to him, "Well, one day your daughter is going to be a famous ballet dancer." And this might sound like a very happy and innocent story, but actually this had a huge impact in my life as a child. And from early on, from when I can remember, whenever I was with my dad and we would go out to friends or his colleagues, he would tell the story to everybody. And as a young girl, even sitting here now, sharing that, my emotional state just went inwards because of this living up to what I think my parents might want me to be.
Sure.
And I think that, my dad was proud in sharing the story, but I think the awareness of not knowing how when I'm small, I was not able to speak for myself, and that anxiety of how am I going to live up to this, I'm going to be a famous dancer one day, certainly has had a big impact on my journey through my life. And I think what I know now with my studies of the nervous system, I was actually in a survival response state that was actually placed upon me at birth.
Wow.
With that big expectation perhaps of successful, the pressure of how am I going to become this famous dancer.
Sure.
And I'd like to share a quote from a Canadian physician, Dr. Gabor Mate, with you on this topic as an opening. And he says, if our environment cannot support our gut feelings and our emotions, then the child, in order to belong and to fit in, will automatically, unwittingly and unconsciously suppress their emotions and their connections to themselves for the sake of staying connected to the nurturing environment, without which the child cannot survive. A lot of children are in this dilemma. Can I feel and express what I feel? Or do I have to suppress that in order to be acceptable, to be a good kid, to be a nice kid? And I think in my childhood, tuning into my father or my parents' expectation, maybe it was not their expectation, but I saw it as an expectation, overpowered my natural ability to be myself.
Right.
And I did not become a famous dancer.
You didn't? I'm so curious.
But I think my journey through dance has really played a significant role in my work today. And I think it is through my dance journey that I have become a great teacher in my work, and now learning and working with babies and mothers, I've really found myself. And I think it's been a really beautiful process from where, if I take my story to now, how it's unfolded.
Wow, well, thank you for that beautiful introduction. I love personal stories. We all connect with that. And you've said already so much, Monja, so I want to unpack it a little bit. But sure, there was definitely a sense of destiny spoken out over you. I mean, you were meant to move, and movement and dance has been such a theme in your life, obviously. But where you are now has taken all these steps in your life, has taught you a lot of things. Do you want to share a little bit about your journey on how you then came to where you are now and what you are doing now, and how it all ties together?
So I started doing ballet when I was 6. And since I can remember, I've always wanted to go to ballet school. And so I matriculated at the National School of the Arts. But during my dance journey, I've had a lot of knee injuries. So I really struggled with that. And at the end of my matric, I wanted to dance overseas. And I spoke to some of my dance teachers at the school at the time, and they said to me, Monja, you're not good enough, so you need to go to Kliptown School of Dance to do maybe a performance certificate and then go overseas. So that's what I did. I went after matric in 95, I went to UCT Ballet School. And in my second year, I had an unfortunate knee accident. I was dancing, and during a ballet class, I subluxed my knee, and my patella went out and it didn't come back. And I thought, this is the end of my dance career. So I had to go for a knee operation. And that is how I came to Pilates. So after my knee operation, one of my dance teachers said, have you heard of Pilates? And that was at the time, in 97, quite new in South Africa. And I managed to find a very good teacher from California in Cape Town. And within 8 months, after Pilates rehabilitation, I auditioned for London and I got in.
Sure.
So my determination of wanting to dance overseas, I was not going to let that stand in my way. And when I got to London, what was really hard for me is I learned that my dance training in South Africa was not as good as it could have been.
Right.
So I had to really start from scratch, but it was the first time in my dance career where I could dance without any injuries. And there were 3 significant events in my dance training in London. And the one was in my second year, I was able to go to dance in New York. It was the first time, 6 months in my entire dance career where I had no injuries.
Sure.
And that was a boost for my confidence. And I also did Pilates in New York. And then in my second year, I decided to do an independent contemporary African dance project where I decided to go to Ghana. And I wanted to live in the township So I went to Accra, and I lived in the township of Medina for 3 months. And I think that story ties back, if I look at today with my work with my non-profit Hamba Bamba Funda, it's just as if at that time the person that I worked with said to me, go to South Africa and to Soweto, and I was like, no, I want to go to a different country, not South Africa. So that's how I ended up in Ghana.
Right.
And now I am working in Soweto with the mothers and the babies, which is really, if I look back, a significant event in my life. And then I was also introduced to the Feldenkrais work through a contemporary dancer in London, which then tied into my Feldenkrais training later. But after my degree in London, I still did not have a job. And I'd auditioned, and the competition overseas is quite tough. And I realized, well, I have to find something else if dancing is not going to be a profession for me. And that's how I did the Pilates training. So, and I think my journey of my own injuries with my knees and going through my own rehab process what made me a good teacher. So I did my Pilates training and came back to South Africa in 2003 and started teaching Pilates. And I think that was the journey, coming back from London, being there for 5 years, and also not knowing where I belong. I didn't want to come back, but I had no choice. And I never thought I would teach Pilates, so I started teaching and working with chronic pain and people struggling with their own injuries. I realized that the emotional side plays a huge role. And I think that is where I started going more into somatic work. And somatic work is really mind and body. It's not separated. So our emotional state is very much part of how we carry ourselves and how we move. And so I did my Feldenkrais training in Switzerland, and that was a 4-year part-time training. And that's where I started, since the movements we did there was a lot of early developmental patterns, crawling, creeping, rolling. And I started, and we had about 6 of my colleagues fell pregnant in the training. And we got to see the babies, they brought them in, and we just saw how a baby can develop without any outside interference. Very natural, let the baby be on the floor, let them move by themselves. And that's where I thought, well, I'd love to learn to work with children. And then I was advised, if you are going to study anything around babies, you have to work with Dr. Chava Shelhav, who was also one of Moshe Feldenkrais' students. And I went to Amsterdam, and I first wanted to visit her training, so she allowed me to visit the training for 3 days. And in those 3 days, I just knew that the involvement, because the child space work is so much the parent involvement than just the baby. So for me, that was a very, very key point of that's the next stage of my training. And I did the child space training for 2 years part-time in Amsterdam. And as part of my child space work, I was asked to do some community work in South Africa, and I ended up going to Soweto as a tourist.
After all.
And I think, what was really beautiful was when I went with a Jewish journalist and photographer, and the day we drove to Soweto, he said, so close your eyes, and we were in the car, and he started playing Lady Black Mambazo. So he said, today you're going to have an experience of sound, taste, movement. All of your senses are going to be opened up. And at that moment is when I said, well, if there's an opportunity for me to work with mothers and babies in Kliptown, please. And he said, of course. And he introduced me to the Kliptown community leader that day. And that's where my journey started with Hamba Bamba Funda, and now it's developed into more going into the nervous system, and I think that is where my theme of connection to self and baby comes in today, because I realize when, especially with mothers who either are pregnant or have a baby, and how does the mother really take care of herself, and if the mother is not able to take care of herself, she's not able to take care of the baby. And the emotional state of both mother and baby is just plays such a significant role in the bonding. So
yeah, they're basically one, right?
Yes,
it's so
yes,
interlinked.
yeah.
So that is a mouthful. What an interesting life she had, isn't it? She's been all over the world, and that's just following where life has taken you. You sound like you're very true to yourself, and yeah, what a beautiful journey. So Monja, as I've listened, well, you've come to a place where you've learned so much that you've come to a place like the world needs to know more.
Yes.
And that is also why I've given you this platform.
Yes.
So what you have this platform, it's midwives listening, birth workers, doulas on sensitive midwifery side, and we have mothers, pregnant mothers to be, birth workers. What would you like? What is your message to them when it comes to this? Let's round it.
I'm going to just first share a quote from Brené Brown, and then I'd like to talk a little bit about what connection to self means for me, and my perception, and then to connection to self and baby. And the quote that is just so profound for me from Brené Brown is, "I define connection as the energy that exists between people when they feel seen, heard, and valued. Yeah. When they can give and receive without judgment, and when they derive sustenance and strength from the relationship." So for me, when I've been reflecting on connection to self and baby, I really see it as a felt experience of togetherness between mother and baby that starts on the moment of conception. And you know, we are inherent beings. Yeah, I think I've made that definition up for myself. You know, that's just the felt experience, and I think that is something that I really want to emphasize in the conversation today, is that we are inherent beings that really are meant to interact. We're not meant to be alone, but we are very much shaped by our environment. And if I may use our conversation here today as an example, you know, when you told me first that we were going to meet online, I was a bit nervous, and I thought, I can do it, but it's going to be different. And the moment you sent me an email to say we can be here today in person, my whole body just went, I can, you know, I'm a hands-on person, and for me to connect with somebody, it's very different to be in person, where I can look you in the eye, and I think coming here, being in your space where I can feel at ease, so the environment that this conversation is taking place is really quite significant. So that makes me feel calm, and when I'm calm, I can communicate better, and this can be changed in an instant. So notice now to you what happens if I turn my back on you.
Where is she now?
And if I all of a sudden take my phone and I now need to send a message to somebody. So what does that do to your state when I turn my back on you? Can you?
Yeah, all of a sudden felt, hey, what happened to our connection?
And what happened into the body? What can you say? What happens inside of you?
Well, you get almost that nervous feeling, like my stomach went like, hey, something is going wrong. We should be here and looking good.
Yes. So that is something that can happen in an instant, and I think is very, very important for a mother to know that the environment that she is carrying this being, it's important to feel that that environment can be safe and supported. So in order for us to seek a good connection, it is we all want to feel safe in an environment, and we want to be present.
Yeah.
So for me, today, being here present with you is also what's making the conversation very different,
Right.
to not being here. And when we are interacting with children, is that presence of really being here with the baby, so that the baby, even though the baby cannot understand language, they can feel.
Right.
So in the womb, the baby can feel the vibrations, the baby can sense the sounds. And if there is constant noise and shouting and stress on the mother, it can really influence the development of the baby's brain.
Wow.
And I feel quite strong that, you know, it's important for parents to be aware of that, and that yes, we are all going through stresses, but understanding the nervous system. So I've already spoken about the calm state of just feeling at ease.
Yeah.
And I've spoken from my birth story about the survival response. And that's something that you adapt. So if you're not aware of that, you can actually end up, I've adapted a lifestyle of survival response. And that is why I've taken risks in my life, or my dance career, going through injury after injury and just persevering. But all I had in my head was, I need to succeed. So it puts a lot of pressure on the child, and if parents can be aware of that, how can you support the space and allow a child to be themselves, not necessarily what the parent want them to be, or ideals of what my child should be. And I think, you know, the understanding the nervous system and really knowing, okay, what place am I today is going to be how I interact with my child.
Yeah.
So that I think is, for me, connection to self and baby is really that togetherness. And what does togetherness mean?
Right.
And for me, it's presence, really being present in the moment.
Yeah, wow, that is, it boils down to something very simplistic, actually. Because you can start feeling a bit overwhelmed now, because we all have stressors in our life, and life happens, and babies do get conceived in the not always ideal circumstances, and we know that. And I'm sure you also see that in your work, and how much can be done. But just bringing it down to being present, every mom can train herself that, no matter where you are, and that's such a good thing for life anyway, for all of us. Whether you're a mother or not. So that makes it very tangible. How else can you make it tangible on how can we facilitate this connection with self and baby?
Well, let me share a little bit with you about how a session in Kliptown, Soweto goes. And also in my private practice, I work with adults. And I think the first thing is to create a space where a person can feel at ease. And, you know, for a mother who is maybe a bit anxious or stressed, is what space can I create for myself? And it can be as simple as being in nature, something that can help you to be calm. So anything, screen time, too much stimulation can put us into that survival response. So in my sessions in Kliptown, I turn up and we create a space where the mothers can come in and just feel, okay, this is quiet. we can be in a space where we can speak and we can be heard. I think that comes back to Brené's quote of seen, heard, and valued. And really, how do you know when you are heard? You know, so
and that's with someone being present, right?
yes, exactly. And just that, and even, you know, speaking to some of the mothers who left the project and who came back, and one of the things they said is, Monja, I didn't know if I could trust this, because can you speak and know that whatever we share here is contained? And that took a while to build trust, and that's why I go into the community, I go into their homes. There's a lot of interaction, but then also working with stimulating the children. So if a mother doesn't know how to stimulate her baby, and you know, I think coming back to my childhood, my mother was a very anxious mother, and a baby can feel that anxiety inside the womb. And when I was born, I was a baby that cried a lot. And what my parents ended up doing was also getting advice, saying, well, put her in the room, close the door, and she will learn to stop
let
crying.
her keep crying.
And what I learned was to shut down.
Yeah.
So as an adult, I have never learned to regulate my emotions. And I've learned through regulation, through psychotherapy, through my Feldenkrais work, through all the work that the somatic practices and studying the nervous system and trauma now as well, is really tools that I have now brought into my daily life. Because if you are suppressing your emotions and you cannot express, then you will have problems later on. And that's also why we have kids that are struggling with attention at school and cannot sit still, and then they are being given medication. So I think that is all. If a mother can know, how do I take care of myself? And there's not a recipe. I think everybody is different, but going to yoga or an exercise is one element. But is what tools do we take to go inward? And that's the hard part is, you know, what do I do for myself to go quiet and really feel myself? And once you can feel yourself, you can know what you need. What kind of support? I need to talk. I need to be hugged. Whatever it is that you feel, and that is something that can come from yourself once you know. And I think that is, you know, very, very important if we can tune into our own nervous system state and listen. I don't think we listen enough to ourselves. It's actually so easy, but not so easy, because our life takes us to different parts, and we're busy, we get distracted, but it is really taking that time to not be distracted. And in my sessions in Kliptown, we also, even something simple of when you change a baby's nappy, be present, not being on the telephone whilst you're changing, or watch TV whilst you're changing a nappy, and speaking to the baby. And when you're dressing them, it's very different. So we give the mothers an experience. What does it feel like if I put a jersey on you and I look away versus looking at you and say, I am now going to put the jersey on. It is and the child just wants to be seen, and when you can make that eye contact, it's really, so that's something I'm really emphasizing in the sessions, is how do you make eye contact and make sure that the child can see you. So I get very excited, because it is just, once it happens, it's very beautiful to see. And then if you can bring that into a daily practice, it's not something you just do once. You have to find, and if you are very busy, in when you feed the child, when you bath the child, when you change the child, those are moments, even if it's 5 minutes, but those are moments that you really dedicate to, I'm committing so that my baby can see I'm present.
Yeah. Very practical. It's
Very.
it's actually so easy, but it's very difficult in our modern life, where we are fast paced, and when we have the cell phone with us all the time and this demand. So just I think so important to have the awareness of how important it is for your baby, for your child, for becoming a healthy person and in touch. So those are really practical things. If you are working with moms as a midwife or a doula or a postnatal carer, this is something really practical that you can tell everyone. You don't need to be a whole dancer with all your knowledge. And with all the training you've done, but this is really practical for everyone. Is be present in the connection and. So I love that.
Thank
If
you.
they want to find out a bit more about you and your work, where can people look you up?
Well, I am on Facebook. I have a Hamba Bamba Funda Facebook page for my non-profit organization, and then I have a Beautiful Mind Facebook page for my private practice. I also have a Hamba Bamba Funda website, and I have a Beautiful Mind website. But my work is really going word of mouth and through connection of people. So, you can just
connection with self and with people. That's right.
Yeah. So, but maybe you can just put some details, and I'd love to share. I think there's an article from the Center of Developing Child from the Harvard University.
Yeah.
That I think we could also share, and if I may, I'm just going to read a small paragraph of the brain architecture, and it's so important for mothers to know that your baby's brain already develops in the womb, and it absorbs all the information and the emotions and whatever goes on in your state. So this article says, early experiences affect the development of brain architecture, which provides the foundation for all future learning, behavior, and health. Just as a weak foundation compromises the quality and strength of a house, adverse experiences early in life can impair brain architecture with negative effects lasting into adulthood.
Sure.
So we can really prevent childhood behaviors, traumas, if we can be parents that can be a little bit more aware. And,
sure.
I know parenting is not easy and there's no right or wrong way. But Maya Angelou says, do the best you can until you know better. Then, when you know better, do better.
Do better. Yeah.
And I just love that.
Oh, that is powerful.
So,
yeah. Sure, you have such a beautiful story and just such important messages to share. Our time's run quite fast, but we will put the links of your work in our show notes and in the comments, that people can look you up. So if you want to know more about Monja's work, go look her up, and we will definitely do something with you again in the future. This was only one part. There's so much more that we can dive into. But thank you so much for sharing also your personal story and journey.
Thank you.
And all the best with your work.
Thank you very much.
Pleasure. So that was us for today. Hope you enjoy that, and we'll see you next time. Have a lovely rest of your day. Bye.